everybody, it's Calxiyn here. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to join our Discord server, become patrons over on Patreon, and comment down below with your thoughts on what we're talking about today. So we are doing an idea brainstorm today about Ilia, because I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this in a couple videos before. But I always kind of had an idea about what if Sun didn't follow Ilia, or didn't follow Blake onto the ship, and Ilia was sort of Sun's substitute. And so if you guys are like, hell, she's evil, like, we'll get to that in a minute. So this is sort of going to be also a RWBY what if, I guess, because I'm kind of like going through and editing everything with Sun in it and replacing Ilia. And so if you guys have watched our past RWBY what if videos, we haven't done one of these in a while, but we basically just kind of go episode by episode and say, okay, well, Sun was there and now he's not. How would this change the story?
We did this before, though.
We did it with, what do you mean? That we've done this idea?
Yes.
I think we mentioned it on, I think we've mentioned it, but I looked and we haven't done it as its own concept.
Okay. So we're just stealing in a brief idea
that didn't make a cut, yeah. Like,
and then try to stretch artificially 10 minutes
I didn't look, I mean, I did look and we haven't done it as far as I could find. I looked up Ilia in our videos, and I couldn't find that we had ever done this, so I thought that it would be good to get going. So here's what we're gonna do. So the first thing is that I don't know what happens to Sun. He's just not here, so don't worry about him.
It's just that whole team never shows up.
No. I mean, Sun just doesn't go after Blake. I don't know why.
So he still exists. Okay,
he exists, he just doesn't go after Blake. So this is different, right?
We've discussed before if, like, Sun was replaced by Velvet, I think.
We haven't even done a full video on that. We only briefly mentioned it.
But
we have so much stuff to do.
I think we did it enough in that one video.
Maybe.
And I can't stretch it out. God forbid you do that.
Hold on. I'm not done. So, let's start. Ilia is the one in the sort of robe, I guess, like in the hood, on the ship. So Blake is doing her thing, she's minding her business, same thing as last time, but she sees somebody in a hood, right, and she gets scared. And so that attracts a sea dragon, everything happens like before, but then Ilia is sort of like, shit, our boat is sinking, and so she helps Blake fight, and Blake, though reluctant, because she hasn't seen Ilia in like 5,000 years, you know, they both fight together because they have to defend the ship.
So here's something that I think you would miss without Sun.
I'm not done yet. We're not even.
Okay, I'm just saying an issue you may run into.
Okay.
Continue.
So here's sort of the idea for this, though, is that Ilia has been sent by Adam to follow Blake after the fall of Beacon. So Ilia is over here playing a double agent, basically. And so she gets on the ship, I don't know, she says something sort of witty, like you need better security or something like that, but, you know, make it about sort of the sea dragon.
Like, what matter? Can't think of any sea dragon puns
I don't know,
off the top of your
maybe
head?
like, well, I always knew that you liked seafood, Blake, but not necessarily like something like that.
I'm really glad you don't write for this show, Cal.
Okay, well, I didn't mean that exactly, but if you needed something, there's an example for you, you know what I mean? I don't make puns, I don't write jokes, okay?
You couldn't even do, like, a long, hard, and full of semen joke about the boat?
I write
Nothing.
Depressive bullshit. Anyways.
And emphasis on bullshit, but please continue.
So, Ilia and her kind of have a talk on the boat, similar to how Sun and Blake had a talk on the boat.
You say depressive, like the book itself has issues.
Okay.
Like, why is that book so sad? Why does it have a blunted affect and no, you know, hope for its future? It's like, oh, that's a depressive book.
Anyway, so Ilia...
You ever tried giving a book a Prozac? It's a fucking...
Ilia and Blake sort of have a heart-to-heart.
Tablet.
Blake asks, you know, what are you doing here? Like, I thought you were still with the White Fang, you know? And so it's that sort of, like, reveal, and you kind of get into their backstory very naturally, because, like, Blake's never mentioned this bitch before. Like, who is she? You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where they're at, and so Ilia sort of explains that when Beacon fell, like, she sort of, you know, she heard about what Adam was doing, and she tried to come and rescue Blake, basically. So obviously she's a double agent right now, so that's a story that's full of bullshit. So basically, like, she's like, I heard what Adam was doing, and like I wanted to try and stop him, but by the time, you know, I got there, it was too late, and I saw you running, so I decided to follow you. Right? Mm-hmm. And we still don't know how long Sun followed Blake for, so this could be a little weird. But let's just, I don't know. I think most people assume that, like, Blake getting on the boat is right, like, a couple days after the follow beacon, so let's just go with that for the sake of right now. If in the case it's been, like, 8 months, like, we're gonna have to have Blake be a little more, like, suspicious here, you know what I mean? And be like, wait a sec, but you know, you followed me for a long-ass time,
Or I imagine
right?
maybe it just took a while on the boat.
On the boat? Yeah. So there's that, right? And
the timeline's a little fucked.
It is. So I think that Blake should be, like, a little, not hostile, but a little, like, suspicious, right? But ultimately, it seems like Ilia is sort of turning over a new leaf. But she's not, because she's still evil. So that's something, right? And so, fast forward a little bit, we get to Menagerie, you know, same sort of thing. You know, I want to hear all about Team RWBY. Callie says that. She says that to Sun, I think. And so instead, it's sort of like Ilia and Callie and Gera are sort of all listening to the adventures of Team RWBY per se, and Ilia's like, she's stewing over here. She's getting a little jealous, if you know what I mean. So, that's sort of something that happens, of course.
It could be new conflict of, like, why did you leave?
Yeah, you left me, like, exactly.
You get to, like, it could be almost like a point of privilege for Blake that she gets to fuck around on the other side of the globe with her friends in a school while I'm over here, like, fighting the good fight. Or at least what she still suspects. Is the good fight. Or considers the good fight.
And so, Ilia, like, kind of has to grin and bear it, because obviously, like, she's pretending that she's still, like, friends with Blake and whatnot, but she, you know, has to kind of sit there and listen to all these stories about Yang and Weiss and RWBY, and she's sort of stewing, like, you were my best friend once, and you left me. Like, we'll get to that later. That's gonna be a later conflict. Calxiyn and Finny come to the door, they give some, like, wink-winks over to Ilia. They know that she's supposed to be there, and Ilia will report back to them later. So this is where sort of the canon part of the story comes in. Ilia is still going to be reporting back to Calxiyn and Finnick, and having sort of those direct orders coming from Adam. But this is where things get interesting. So I think that instead of the fight between Ilia, Sun, and Blake in RWBY Volume 4, something else that could happen is Blake finds out that Ilia is sneaking around, and that's why they fight. And so instead of having it, like, be Ilia's reveal, it's more like Blake finds her sort of, you know, going to Calxiyn and Finnick, asking what she's doing. A mini fight ensues, but, like, you know, they're best friends. They can't fight. Blake thinks, like, you know what I mean? And so they kind of have, that sort of fight scene, but in the end, like, it's not really about winners or losers. Ilia finally explains, that she's just trying to get information to keep, Gera, Callie, and Blake safe. So we think. You know what I mean? That's sort of like the end of Volume 4. Like, obviously some other stuff happens with Blake and Sun.
Because 4 ends, essentially, with Sun being injured and, her realizing that it's Ilia who's following her.
Yeah, and so, like, stuff like that, right? And so, I want to insert a couple things. So, Blake and Gera have a heart-to-heart. I think they should still do that, but instead of Sun eavesdropping, I don't feel like Ilia's an eavesdropper, right? And so, I think that's something that would sort of, happen there, is that, you know, we would see Gera and Blake's heart-to-heart kind of, fill out, but the reason why it stops instead is because Ilia is sneaking off, if that makes sense. Right? Because that's why Sun interrupts. It's because he finds Ilia and the mask in the market or whatever. So instead, Blake would see that Ilia is, like, on the balcony and going somewhere, and so she'd be like, okay, Dad, like, we can finish this later, right? So that's where that sort of fight ensues that we already talked about. And at the end, when Blake comes home and sort of when Ilia and Blake come home from their, like, little, lover spat, so to speak, right, you can kind of, see, and this would also, like, kind of give a precursor to them fighting in Volume 5, because, we kind of already know, like, that they both know each other's fighting styles, what they're both capable of, and we can get hyped for a real fight when they're both, like, really angry at each other. And so there's that. So, you know, Ilia would come back, give some fake info, to Gera, and I think that Blake should still sort of have that heart-to-heart where, you know, Ilia, I think, should drive home the point that Blake sort of left her for this new team, and that now Blake is leaving her new team as well, so sort of what you said, like, you know, Ilia's trying to fight the good fight over here, but Blake is dicking around on this side of on the other side of the world, right? And so I think that something that Ilia should say, because really this heart-to-heart is what kind of changes Blake's mind about, like, leaving Team RWBY, right? Is that I think that, like, her conversation with Sun, I mean, but in this new canon, I think that it would be interesting, for it to be sort of like, you left us so you could have, like, a new life or whatever, and now you're leaving your new life just like, don't leave Yang like you left me, sort of thing. And I think that'd be, like, a powerful, emotional moment, and they would, like, hug it out or something, and the volume ends.
So an issue about this is
I'm not done!
Okay, because you say the volume ends.
I mean, it does end, though.
Volume 4 or Volume 5?
Volume 4 ends.
Okay.
Right?
All
right, so, Volume 5 starts hot and fresh. So I think that what should happen here is that they're gonna give the speech. That's the whole thing, right? They try to recruit, and then Blake is supposed to give this big, speech or whatever. And that's when Ilia starts, speaking out, right? So I think that in this version, Blake and Ilia should try to give the speech together, because Ilia is trying to act like she is a reformed White Fang member, and so she's supposed to encourage people. But during her part of the speech, per se, things get a little wild. You know what I mean? Sort of like last time, and Blake's like, Ilia, like, you can't talk like that. Like, we're not trying to advocate for violence. We're trying to, like, get people to help fight against Adam. You know what I mean? Like, sort of like that, and they sort of have a fight about the way to do things, and then that could even bring in
maybe it could
Gera
be
and Sienna.
It must be about she surprises her, or else, like, maybe Blake
I
is
don't
sort
mean
of bending to her will, or, like, wasn't even really aware of her ideas. Or they were trying to force a middle ground where there really couldn't have been a middle ground.
Yeah, so something like that. And then Gera could kind of bring up Sienna and, like, you guys are just like me and Sienna when we were trying to fight the good fight, you know what I mean?
Back when we was fucking...
And then, with that transition, you could have Sienna die. So you could have Gera mention Sienna, because he kind of sees Sienna in him, in Ilia and Blake, like,
that would
two
be
people.
a really good way to end the episode, where it's just like, I remember, she reminds me of, Sienna, yada yada yada, her strength, like, describing her as, like, Adam's walking in the room, and then like, talking is the reveal in the end of the episode.
And then they kill her.
And then, and then cut to black next episode.
Well, yeah, next episode they kill her.
And then to death.
And so that's something that I think that would be interesting. So at this point, Sienna's fucking dead, right? Ilia, like, reports back the information that, Sienna is dead or whatever. Remember that Gera also sends a letter warning the school about the White Fang attack? And
it's intercepted by Batboy?
By Batboy. Yua? What's his name again?
Not
Yuga.
Yet. Something like that.
Or something.
It's a Y and a U and a G. And
so that happens, right? And so at this point, Ilia is starting to, like, lure Blake in for the big twisty twist that she was double teaming? She was a double agent all this time. So now they go to the quote-unquote, like, to recruit the Night Faunus, but Ilia ends up leading Blake into an alley. Spider-Girl and the other one, both, like, the catcher, Batboy and Spider-Girl.
And do they drop the gay bomb here?
Did they drop? They did. They do drop the gay bomb here.
In the show, but in your version,
they do.
Do you think it's as impactful?
Well, I think that by now we would already know that Ilia has feelings for Blake after sort of the talk, like, don't leave them like you left me, but we wouldn't be sure yet, right? Because, like, people would argue, like, she could mean as friends. Like, you know what I mean? And so you could have that scene to foreshadow that Ilia had feelings in Volume 4, but now in Volume 5 you sort of have, like, the straight-up confession, like, yeah, she's gay, like, confirmed. You know what I mean? And so you could kind of have that. So you kind of have the exact same scene that sort of happened the last time, right, with Ilia, but this time she, like, reveals that, like, you think that I, like, been working with you, like, I've been, like, working with Adam, like, this entire time, and now I'm gonna send him to you, you know what I mean? So sort of, like, and then Blake could sort of have this, like, but, like, Ilia, like, we've, you know, like, you've been helping me this entire time, what the fuck, you know what I mean? Obviously not like that, but something similar.
Presumably something more delicately written.
And, yeah, and so Ilia is like, I think that she should say something like, I always, like, wanted you to look at me the same way that I looked at Adam, and now, like, hearing about, like, the members of your team, like, Ilia could kind of drop a little little thing in there that, like, it's not only about Adam, but because she was in the Belladonna house while Blake was sort of explaining, like, how she felt about her teammates and, like, how she left Yang and all of that stuff, you know, Ilia could be like, I thought things, like, would be different now after you left Beacon, but, like, I see that, you know, just like how you ignored me for Adam, you're gonna ignore me for, and she can say Yang, or she can say, her, you know, her team or something along those lines, right? Because that was Sun's whole kind of speech, is that she left Yang and she shouldn't have really left Yang and then the other team members. So you could have Ilia sort of say that, like, you know, like, maybe at the beginning when she followed her on the boat, Ilia wasn't necessarily trying to double agent for Adam. She wanted to see if things were different, but then she found out that Blake's sort of, like, her, like, she has new friends now, and I don't want to say her heart belongs to someone else, that's a bit too, like, shippy, but you guys probably understand what I mean by now.
My alliances have changed.
Yeah, or, like, she has
fundamentally
this is a bad example. In Kingdom Hearts,
oh, of course.
Riku is, like, you traded us for Donald and Goofy. So Riku says, you traded Kairi and I for Donald and Goofy.
you traded me for Donald and Goofy.
Yeah,
who?
Donald and Goofy.
I'm confused.
Yeah. So Ilia could say, you traded me for Adam, and now you're trading me for your team again, and that's what really has made her mad, and, like, keeps her going, so to speak. So same thing happens as before, same sort of fight ensues. Blake escapes, from Spider-Man and Bat-Boy this time. Not sure how she's gonna do that, cause Sun obviously helped her with the surprise attack, but I feel like that Blake could do, like, some sort of, like, exploding clone, and maybe she also gets caught in that explosion, but, like, it's worth, you know what I mean? Because that's something that she does in Volume 2, I think. She makes an exploding version of herself, so it's almost like, I don't want to say, like, it's a suicide bomb, but, like, it's a Blake clone explosion that helps her get away, but she's also injured. Then she goes back to the house to make sure that Gera and Callie are okay, and then we get the real Ilia and Blake fight, and everything sort of happens the exact same way as in the show. So Ilia sort of gets that, like, sort of redemption that we talk about. Gera saves her, like, all of that. She saves Gera, like, basically all the same stuff that happens before. So now the show is sort of on the same track, and we end in the same place. Pretty much.
All without Sun.
All without
Monkey Boy.
So this wasn't just to write out Sun, let's make that clear. So I think that this does a couple things. We get a lot of character development between Blake and Ilia. This may have improved, like, the menagerie arc slightly if Ilia and Blake had sort of these moments together. It would have also introduced Sienna in a natural way, because you could have, you know, Gera sort of mentioned that Ilia and Blake fighting is sort of how, like, Gera and Sienna fought, and he doesn't want that for his kids. You know what I mean? Not that Ilia is his kid, but, like, one of his kids.
What Sun functioned as, in a lot of cases, was, like, audience surrogate. So, like, what is all this fancy menagerie stuff? And so you just have, so Sun's not used to it. He just explains stuff. He explains, like, she has no reason why to explain, like, why she was a chief unless Sun was there.
Who?
It's, Blake. Because,
oh, you mean that Gera's a chief?
Yeah, Gera's a chief, or then she would be the chief's daughter.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, they could still work that in.
That's the thing, though, is that by working it in throughout, not through, like, a character, but just through, like animation or by subtle writing, it makes, I think, the writing a lot better.
Ilia could even bow, like, right? Because not to bow, like, bow, but, like, that she, you know, Gera's the chief, you know, she has to be polite. So she could be, like, chieftain, like,
there's a
happy
lot of
to
ways
see
to,
you, you
there's
know,
a
like,
lot of
something
ways
like
to do
that.
it that I think would be more subtle and better than just having sort of Sun being like, which, although it doesn't happen a lot, it does happen a few times.
Yeah. And so there's so many ways to work that in, because obviously Blake, like, that's her dad, she doesn't need to pay her respects, but, like, imagine going to meet the Prime Minister, you don't just walk in and be like, hey, you know what I mean? So Ilia could do something respectful, like, hello, like, a pleasure to see you, chief or something like that, whatever they call him, like, whatever his official title is. And so, yeah, I think that, like, just through natural dialogue, you could fix Sun expositioning. Is that what you were kind of gonna say, that Sun serves it? Because you kept trying to say, there's a problem! Like,
no, that is what I said. He was audience surrogate.
Yeah. But I don't think that we need that.
No, you don't.
And so would
Which
you
is
agree?
also what I said. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's just that earlier in my, like, sort of idea, you were like, okay, but there's an issue.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
But then I realized maybe not as much of an issue as I initially thought.
Yeah. And I think that it would be easy, and I think that they should show off sort of the conversations of Blake talking about Team RWBY, so you could then see Ilia kind of be like, feels bad. You know what I mean? Just stuff like that. But yeah. This is my idea. So a couple of you guys have been kind of like, Cal, are you ever going to sort of make a RWBY criticism video? Probably not like that, but this is probably the closest thing that you'll get. These aren't criticisms, and I'm not trying to say that they should have done the show this way, but when we do idea brainstorms, it is about what would have been, like, different writing choices, and what would have been, like, interesting to do necessarily. So I think that if you guys sort of want videos like the ones that are sort of being uploaded to YouTube at the moment, like, this is probably going to be around something that you guys get, is sort of ideas where we kind of pick apart the show and put it back together just in a new way, where it's a sort of positive, like, restructure. It's not supposed to be criticizing things that already happened, but more at looking things that could have possibly been, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Yeah? And so I hope that you guys enjoyed this. So Hunter, do you like this idea?
Sure, no, yes.
Sure, yes. No, yes! Sorry, I caught you off guard, did I?
Yes.
Yeah, so, I don't know, like, just tell me what you think a little more.
I already told you what I think. It's...
I want to hear you, like, boost my ego.
Fucking hell, you have such a fragile ego. It's not even funny sometimes. No, I mean, we've done a few videos about writing. No wonder why Sun fans dislike you, Cal.
Because I just write him out of everything.
Do videos about
getting rid of him.
Getting rid of him. Yeah. No, I do like it. I think obviously, like, maybe you lose. Although certainly Callie and Gera maybe could bring up, like, comedy relief slack that... I mean,
Callie's pretty funny.
She's, yeah, and sort of...
She hit somebody over the head with a tray. Like...
I like a lot of the stuff that she does more so than Sun's sort of additions, let's say. So in general, no, I think that's a pretty good idea.
Alright. So anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to join our Discord server, become patrons over on Patreon, and comment down below with your thoughts on our idea brainstorm. And we will see you later. Bye, guys.